Isabel dos Santos, the once Africa's richest woman, a billionaire with businesses stretching from Angola to Europe. She lived a life of luxury with fortune that seemed untouchable, but behind the glimpse and glamour, there was a darker truth, one built on corruption, stolen wealth, and shady deeds. Her father, José Eduardo dos Santos, ruled Angola as the president for nearly 4 decades, and through him, she amassed her empire. But when power shifted, her fortune began to crumble. This is the story of how Isabel dos Santos, the billionaire princess of Angola, rose to power, amassed her wealth, lost everything, and the impact of her downfall on Angola and other African countries. To understand Isabel dos Santos' rise, we first need to go back to 1973 when she was born. She was the eldest daughter of Tatiana Kokanova and José Eduardo dos Santos. As at 1973, when Isabel was born, she and her family were living in Baku, Azerbaijan, and had to later move back to Angola in 1975 when Angola gained its independence from Portugal. 3 years after moving back to Angola, her father became the president of Angola, and shortly afterward, he divorced Isabel's mother, who took her to London, where she received an education at St. Paul Public School, after which she went to study business management and electrical engineering at King's College, still in London, and graduating in 1995, which she often cited as proof of her entrepreneurial skills. Apart from attending prestigious schools, Isabel grew up in a life of privilege and luxuries. In 1997, at the age of 24, Isabel dos Santos entered her first business venture when she became a partner in a Luanda restaurant called Miami Beach. The owner, Roy Barata, allowed a small ownership stake, believing her association with the restaurant would make it successful, which did. However, Isabel's first venture that would generate significant wealth came in 1999 when she created Transatlantic Investment Services, an investment company headquartered in Gibraltar, which is when her father's money and influence started kicking in majorly. Through her father's influence, the company obtained a 24.5% stake in a diamond marketing partnership that sold African diamonds around the world. 1 year later, which is in year 2000, her father granted Unitel, a Netherlands-based international telecommunications company, the right to become the first mobile telephone company to operate in Angola. Isabel dos Santos received a 25% stake in the company, estimated to be worth at least $1 billion. In 2005, Isabel formed a partnership with Fernando, a Portuguese-born Angolan banker. Together, they opened Banco Internacional de Crédito, which quickly became one of the largest banks in Angola. Isabel owned 25% of the bank, which generated personal earnings for her of approximately $160 million a year. Later in 2005, she acquired a 7% stake in Gap Energia, a Portuguese energy company, and nearly 19% of Banco BPI, Portugal's largest bank. She was also a controlling shareholder of the Portuguese cable TV and telecom firm SGPS, holding 26% stake. In June 2005, she spent $200 million to become part owner of the Portuguese electric power equipment firm Efacel Power Solution. She also has stakes in supermarkets and cement companies in Angola. In 2016, her father appointed her as chair of Sonangol, the Angolan state oil company. We can go on and on the businesses she was acquiring and involving herself in, but to summarize how wealthy and influential she was becoming, in 2013, Forbes named her the richest woman in Africa with an estimated net worth of $3.5 billion. And in 2015, the British Broadcasting Corporation (BBC) named her one of the 100 most influential women in the world. With all these businesses acquisition and her name making wave as best as we could trace, every major Angola investment held by Isabel dos Santos stemmed either from taking a chunk of a company that wanted to do business in Angola, or from a stroke of the presidential pen that got her into the action. However, regardless of her father's part and influence in helping her acquiring huge stake in some of the mega companies we've mentioned, Isabel today still claimed to be a self-made billionaire, claiming that her success was due to wise investment and hard work. She was of course not a single lady through all this. According to Forbes, she got married in 2002 to Sindika Dokolo, a Congolese art collector and the son of the founder of Bank of Kinshasa. Her husband, however, died on October 29, 2020 in a diving accident in Dubai, leaving Isabel with the 3 children they had together. The sources of funds for acquiring stake of some of these companies have been left out as they are still labeled allegations since the case is still ongoing in court to date, as you will get to know more about later in this video.
Angola has its first new president in almost 4 decades. On Tuesday, João Lourenço was inaugurated in Luanda, taking over from José Eduardo dos Santos, who led the country for 38 years.
In 2017, everything changed. After 38 years of rule, José Eduardo dos Santos stepped down as Angola's president. When he stepped down, he chose João Lourenço as his successor, supporting him to make him the president. However, that support didn't last long, as his successor, João Lourenço, not only promised to crack down on corruption, but when he became the president, he went against his predecessor's legacy, a bold move that many didn't expect. One of the President Lourenço's first acts was to fire Isabel dos Santos as chair of Sonangol, the Angola's national oil company. Second, he fired José Filomeno dos Santos, son of the former President José Eduardo dos Santos, from his post at the helm of Angola's sovereign wealth fund. Both Isabel and Filomeno dos Santos faced corruption investigation afterward, both denying any wrongdoing. Of course, the investigation didn't stop there. As established that one of Lourenço's first target was Isabel dos Santos, with Isabel's father out of power, the scrutiny on Isabel's wealth intensified, though her critics has long argued that her empire was built on corruption and nepotism, with state funds funneled into her business, but it wasn't until 2020 that the full extent of her dealings will be revealed. By the way, let me remind you that it will mean the world to me if you subscribe to this channel if you haven't done that already. Thank you. In January 2020, a massive leak of documents known as the Luanda Leaks exposed how Isabel dos Santos and her husband, Sindika Dokolo, had siphoned hundreds of millions of dollars out of Angola. The document showed how she used a network of share company and offshore accounts to launder money and secure lucrative contracts with Angola's national oil company, Sonangol. Which means at the heart of the scandal was Angola's national oil company, Sonangol. Remember, Isabel was appointed chair of the company by her father when he was still in power before she got fired by her father's successor. During her time as the chair of Sonangol, she approved transfers of millions of dollars to offshore accounts, including her own, which critics and investigators termed suspicious. For many Angolans, the revelation confirmed what they had long suspected, that is, the Dos Santos family had enriched themselves while the country struggled with poverty and underdevelopment. For this, public outrage grew and calls for Isabel to face justice echoed across Angola and beyond. Soon after the leaks, Angolan and Portuguese authorities moved quickly, Isabel's assets were frozen and investigations were launched into her businesses, which marked the beginning of the downfall of the empire that once seemed untouchable. Right after her assets were frozen across 3 countries by courts and lawsuits claiming hundreds of millions of dollars in unpaid debt in 4th country, Forbes assumed she has no assets and likely little chance to gain back control of the frozen assets, and as a result, Forbes dropped her from their released 2021 list of Africa's richest people. The Luanda leaks were just the beginning. Soon after the documents surfaced, a global investigation revealed a complex web of corruption with Isabel at its center. Authorities charged her with embezzlement, money laundering, diverting state funds into personal offshore accounts. The most damning evidence came from Isabel's role as chair of Angola's national oil company, Sonangol. During her short time in charge, she allegedly funneled over $1 billion of state funds to companies linked to her and her family. These funds were supposed to be used for Angola's development. Isabel and her associate allegedly used a network of over 400 share companies, many registered in tax havens like the British Virgin Islands, Mauritius, and Hong Kong. These companies allowed her to conceal her true ownership of assets and move money out of Angola with little oversight. With the alleged stolen money, Isabel purchased luxury homes in London, yachts, expensive art, and stake in major European companies. One may say it was an extravagant life built on the back of Angola's oil wealth, while millions in her country lived in poverty. Well, as the international investigation unfolded, the walls began to close in on Isabel, starting from a court in Angola ordering the freezing of her assets in local companies, including her stake in Unitel, banks, and several properties. Shortly after, Portuguese authorities froze her bank accounts and seized her properties in Lisbon and beyond. One of the Portugal's major blows came from the Portuguese banking sector. Since she held large stake in some of the Portugal's biggest financial institutions, including Banco BIC and BPI, not only were those assets frozen, but the bank distanced themselves from her. The same thing happened to her investment in Portugal's energy companies and the media industry that she has invested heavily in for years. Isabel's legal trouble didn't end with Angola and Portugal. Investigations were opened in the UK, Switzerland, and several other countries where she allegedly funneled money through her offshore accounts. While many of her assets were frozen, the process of repatriating the stolen funds was slow and complicated by legal challenges. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Isabel denied all charges, claiming the accusations are politically motivated as part of a campaign by Angola's new president to discredit her family. But with billions of dollars unaccounted for and an ongoing investigation, the truth seems harder to escape. Also, as for the recovery of the allegedly stolen funds, since her business empire was built on a web of offshore companies spanning multiple continents and tax havens, such international structure not only concealed her wealth but also made it difficult for authorities to track down and recover the stolen funds. And while her luxurious assets were being seized, the reality in Angola was starkly different. Despite Angola being one of the top 5 most oil-producing countries in Africa, millions of Angolans continue to live in poverty. Typical of Africa's country, one may say. The scandal did, however, raise serious questions about how Angola's resources had been mismanaged and exploited by the elite. But that's most likely all there's going to be. Great question. Though for many Angolans, the fall of Isabel dos Santos symbolized a broader reckoning with corruption and a little hope as to whether João Lourenço's government fighting crime could really be a central part of its agenda. Either way, the road to reform was just beginning. And as Angola's fight against corruption continues, the question remained, would Angola be able to recover the billions lost to corruption? Isabel dos Santos may no longer hold the title of Africa's richest woman, but her story serves as a reminder of the vast wealth and power that can be concentrated in the hand of a few, especially in African countries, and the little to no consequence when that power is misused. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now. Thanks for watching and see you next Sunday.